that we couldn't do these big plans anymore that cost lots and lots of money. That just wasn't gonna be feasible anymore. So we presented an idea to all of you about how we thought that we should go about this. One of the projects that we talked about was called the Bear River Data Model Pilot Study. And that one really concentrated on GIS and all of the GIS that we receive in this office. So you all gave us a blessing and we got an appropriation to study that and figure out how we could make the GIS that comes into this office a little bit more user-friendly. So through all of that work, we created a framework plan, a data framework plan, and also a schema. So now we have some things set in place, some templates that the consultants can use that help them put their GIS into a standardized format that goes now into a master geo database that's kept over at Words under the protection of Tony, who's kind of, I look at Tony kind of like our Charlie in Charlie's Angels. If you guys remember, some of you are probably too young to remember Charlie's Angels, but the guy that was always there but nobody ever really saw, that's Tony. He's our Charlie. He keeps everything going. So we've got these templates set up. We're passing those to the consultants and everything's been going really, really well. So we are looking forward to populating this gigantic geodatabase so that in the future, that'll assist us in being able to really get into water use, water supply, water infrastructure, project feasibility, all of that type of thing. So in the meantime, while we're working through all of this, and I still have yet to figure out who nominated us, nobody's fessed up for this, but in April, we were notified that we were nominated for this award. We had not yet found out whether we won or not because it's like hundreds of thousands of groups are nominated because it's worldwide. Because of course, Esri, who is the main GIS software company, it's a worldwide corporation. So then we did find out that we won the award. So this year they had to have a virtual conference. They had a big ceremony at the virtual conference and we were virtually presented our award. And then it came in the mail. So this is what we got. And then each one of the team members also got a certificate for themselves so they can hang it up proudly in their office. So I just wanted to make sure that you all knew that. I sent out an email and I appreciate everybody with the congratulations. And it was a lot of hard work. And sometimes I think, as Brandon pointed out, he's very good about acknowledging that. It's that sometimes goes unnoticed. So again, Mike Robertson is now going to, take the mantle and continue on with all of this. So probably he's got more of the lion's share of the work to do. And Mabel and Tony, again, our Charlie, and then Peter, Gill, and Rosemary, who have now taken other opportunities in other states and have left us. But I just appreciate the opportunity to be able to tell you guys a little bit about this because I'm pretty proud of my team and they're a great group of people to work with. And I think we're rolling down a really good track. So I'm pretty excited about it. So thank you.
Thank you. That traveling trophy, I'd like to see somebody take that out of Jody's office for a while in the near future.
Who's your right arm?
Yeah. Yeah, that's shows the level of quality people that we have in water development, engineering. I think it's awesome. Any other thoughts about that? Let's move to the approval of minutes. Can I get a motion on August 13 and 14 minutes of 2020?
I will move we approve the minutes for 14th or the 13th and the 14th of August.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Suker and seconded by Commissioner Yankee. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Approve, say nay. Motion passes. We go to item 5, and we will turn that to Brandon and Barry.
Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it over to Barry.
Morning, Mr. Chairman. Well, this morning marks the culmination of our consultant selection process for our 2021 planning projects. I think if you recall back at your May commission meeting, it's where this all started when the commission gave preliminary approval for these projects, which sent into motion our current selection process. The projects were advertised on our website. They were all also advertised in the Casper Star for 4 successive weeks. And then we also sent out to our email distribution list of more than 200 consulting firms. That process ran through from May 29th to June 23rd, so about a month we advertised these projects. And at that time, we were asking for statements of qualification, letters of interest from interested firms that were interested in proposing on these projects. Also, as part of that, if a firm was to wish to claim residency status, because the statutes do cover how we have to handle that, there was a residency certification form for those seeking that status that could send in. Should tell you during that month period, we got 29 different firms came in seeking various projects. The firms were then shortlisted by our project managers with a goal of coming up with 5 qualified firms for each project. That didn't always happen. Sometimes we didn't have that many submissions, but the goal was to come up with 5 qualified firms. RFPs were then sent out July 21st, and proposals were due August 21st. So consultants had 1 month to put together their proposals. And then oftentimes that included site visits with the sponsor and our project manager and so forth. Once those proposals were received, they were rebundled and sent immediately out to the selection teams and to perform that ranking exercise. And we've talked about that ranking exercise in the past, but you who all participated in that ranking exercise had about 3 weeks to get your rankings back to us. And those came in and the rankings were tallied, and the top 3 firms then received the interviews, and those interviews are which we participated in the last 2 days. Okay. The only main thing a big thanks to everybody that was involved in this process, getting us to this point. And that includes planning, construction staff, our front staff in our office. It was a real, really did take a village to get us to this point. So, and thank you to all you participated. The one thing I will tell you out of this process and the actions we're about to take here, we will have recommended budget amounts for each of these projects based on the consultant that was selected. And the whole idea here is that we now have firm dollar amounts to then hardwire into our omnibus water planning bill. So by moving the selection up on the front end, rather than us setting the budgets, this is the new process. We now have, because we've gone through this whole process, we now have firm dollar amounts to put into the omnibus planning bill. And of course, that'll be in the next couple of months. So unless there's any questions, I would think we're ready for motions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
With this new process, what's the typical completion date for these studies? Does it, like the studies we did, I noticed pretty quick turnaround.
Mr. Chairman, yes, and Commissioner Purcell, the one thing good about the new process, I will say, is that we are able to start the projects earlier. And under the old process, we couldn't issue notice to proceed till June. Now, under the new process, we're issuing notice to proceed first part of April. So consultants get off and running a couple months earlier. So that's a good thing. They have a longer field season and so forth. As far as completion, we're still looking at about a 1-year study. It varies a little bit depending whether it's, what type of study it is, level 1, level 2, whether it's a watershed study, so forth. But you're looking to a year and a half at max.
Thank you. With that, we'll go ahead and will we vote on them as one block?
Mr. Chairman, we need individual motions.
Thank you.
Yes.
So we'll start with who has Bighorn Regional Transmission?
Mr. Chair, I do.
Would you read that, please?
The selection committee for the Bighorn Regional Transmission Level 2 project ranks the consulting firms interviewed in the following order. There was just Dow was the only consulting firm. I, Ron Cayley, move the director be instructed to begin contract negotiations with Dow for the consulting services on the Bighorn Regional Transmission Level 2 project with a recommended appropriation of $146,000. Further, the selection committee offers the following suggestions to the director during contract negotiations. Add proposed scope alterations, Task 3, System GIS, Task 5, Environmental Review, and Task 6, Financial Model at no additional cost to the project.
Do we have a second?
Second.
So it was moved by Commissioner Cayley and seconded by Commissioner Purcell. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Who has Byron Rural?
Mr. Chair, I do.
Please read it.
The selection committee for the Byron Rural Water Supply Level 2 project ranks the consulting firms interviewed in the following order. Dow, Morrison Marley, Engineering Associates. I, Ron Cayley, move the director to be instructed to begin contract negotiations with Dell for the consulting services on the Byron Rural Water Supply Level 2 project with a recommended appropriation of $127,000.
We have a motion for the Byron Rural Water. Do we have a second?
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Cayley and seconded by Commissioner Yankee. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Gillette Water, please.
Mr. Chairman, the selection committee for the Gillette Water Systems Improvements Level 2 project ranks consulting firms interviewed in the following order. 1, Morrison Merrily. 2, Dowell. 3, HDR. I move the director be instructed to begin contract negotiations with Morrison Merrily for consulting services on the Gillette Water Systems Improvements Level 2 project with a recommended appropriation of $150,000.
Has a motion by Commissioner Little. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Cayley. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Could someone read the Highland Irrigation District?
Mr. Chairman, the selection committee for the Highland Irrigation District Master Plan Level 1 project ranks the consulting firms interviewed in the following order. 1, AVI. 2, Jorgensen. 3, Short Elliott Hendrickson. I move the director be instructed to begin contract negotiations with AVI for consulting services on the Highland Irrigation District Master Plan Level 1 project with a recommended appropriation of $192,000.
Moved by Commissioner Little. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Wagner. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Would someone read Hoback River Watershed?
Chairman, the selection committee for the Hoback Watershed Level 1 project ranks the consulting firms interviewed in the following order. Rio Verde Engineering, Biota, Y2 Consultants. I move the director be instructed to begin contract negotiations with Rio Verde Engineering for consulting services on the Hoback Watershed Study Level 1 project with a recommended appropriation of $277,000. Further, the selection committee offers the following suggestions to the director during contract negotiations. Accept scope alteration 1, which is to map irrigated lands regardless of adjudicated flow at no additional cost to the project.
Had a motion by Commissioner Yankee. Do we have a second?
I'll move second.
Seconded by Commissioner Suker. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Lander ditches, please.
Mr. Chairman, the selection committee for the Lander Ditches Level 2 rehabilitation project ranks the consulting firms interviewed in the following order. HDR, Trihydro, Sage Civil Engineering. I move the director be instructed to begin contract negotiations with HDR for consulting services on the Lander Ditches Level 2 rehabilitation project with a recommended appropriation of $242,000. Further, the selection committee offers the following suggestions to the director during contract negotiations. Number 1, utilize existing data owned by the city of Lander collected via drone technology to determine extent of ditches and system deficiencies at no additional cost. Number 2, accept scope alteration 2, included additional in-depth stakeholder outreach, including meetings, workshops, one-on-one and online engagement. Develop technical outreach materials and strategies to ensure stakeholder participation, as well as understanding of project opportunities and rehabilitation recommendations. Level of effort to be negotiated, but not to exceed $30,000.
Motion made by Commissioner Yankee. Do we have a second? Second. We have a second from Commissioner Clint Glick. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We move to the Lander Water Master Plan. Would someone please read that?
The selection committee for the Lander Water Master Plan Level 1 project ranks the consulting firms interviewed in the following order. Number 1, HDR. Number 2, William H. Smith. Number 3, James Gores and Associates. I, Clinton Glick, move the director to be instructed to begin contract negotiations with HDR for consulting services on the Lander Water Master Plan Level 1 project with a recommended appropriation of $200,000. Further, the selection committee offers the following suggestions to the director during contract negotiations. Number 1, accept scope alteration 1, drone survey of Worthen Meadows Reservoir at a cost of $4,000. Number 2, accept scope alteration number 2, cost savings if firm is selected for both the Water Master Plan and the Water Lander Ditch projects at a savings of $8,100.
Motion made by Commissioner Glick. Do we have a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by Commissioner Yankee. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Would someone read the Little Snake River Valley Water System?
The selection committee for the Little Snake River Valley Water Supply Level 2 Phase 2 project ranks the consulting firms interviewed in the following order. 1, Wink Associates. 2, William H. Smith. 3, Forsgren Associates. I, Mike Purcell, move the director be instructed to begin contract negotiations with Wink Associates for consulting services on the Little Snake River Valley Water Supply Level 2 Phase 2 project with a recommended appropriation of $163,000. Further, selection committee offers the following suggestions to the director during contract negotiations. 1, include a discretionary task in the amount of $15,000. And 2, adopt scope alternative number 4 to inspect the town of Dixon's water storage tank in the amount of $2,800.
Little Snake River Valley Water System motion has been made by Commissioner Purcell. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Chairman.
Seconded by Commissioner Wagner. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Would someone read Nordic Ranches Water Master Plan?
Yes, I will. The selection committee for the Nordic Ranches Water Master Plan Level 1 project ranks the following consulting firms interviewed in the following order. Forsgren Associates, Sunrise Engineering, Jones and DeMille. I, Mark Cott, move the director be instructed to begin contract negotiations with Forsgren Associates for consulting services on the Nordic Ranches Water Master Plan Level 1 project with a recommended appropriation of $63,000.
Been moved by Commissioner Cott. Do we have a second?
Second.
And seconded by Commissioner Little. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Would someone please read Rock Creek and Trail Creek?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The selection committee for the Rock Creek and Trail Ridge Creek In-Stream Flow 2020 Level 1 project ranks the following consultant firms interviewed in the following order. Number 1, Arrow Land and Water. Number 2, Biota. And number 3, Applied Consulting Services. I, Rod Wagner, move that the director be instructed to begin contract negotiations with Arrow Land and Water for consulting services on the Rock Creek and Trail Ridge Creek In-Stream Flow 2020 Level 1 project with a recommended appropriation of $20,000.
Second. I have a motion by Commissioner Wagner and a second by Commissioner Purcell. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Would someone please read Upton Water Master Plan?
Mr. Chairman, the selection committee for the Upton Water Master Plan Level 1 project ranks the consulting firm interviewed in the following order. Number 1, Bear Lodge Engineering and Surveying. There were no other proposals received for this project. I, Larry Suker, move the director be instructed to begin contract negotiations with Bear Lodge Engineering and Surveying for consulting services in the Upton Water Master Plan Level 1 project with a recommended appropriation of $153,000.
Upton Water Plan has been moved by Commissioner Suker. Do I have a second?
Second.
And been seconded by Commissioner Glick. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, if any? Would someone please read Wheatland Water Master Plan?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. The selection committee for the Wheatland Water Master Plan Level 1 project ranks the consulting firms interviewed in the following order. Number 1, Civil Engineer Professionals Incorporated. Number 2, Engineering Associates. And number 3, Sunrise Engineering. I, Rod Wagner, move the director be instructed to begin contract negotiations with Civil Engineer Professionals Incorporated for the consulting services on the Wheatland Water Master Plan Level 1 project with a recommended appropriation of $125,000. And our committee chose not to do the sculpt alternatives that were mentioned in that plan.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Wagner and seconded by Commissioner Kaylee. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. That is
Thank
the
you,
end
Mr.
of that.
Chairman. Thank you.
We would like to thank everybody who helped with those interviews and who put them together, and for the engineering companies who came and made recommendations to do these projects. Any questions or comments on that? We'll move to item 6 and we'll turn it to Brandon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to thank all of the consultants who put the time and effort into providing good quality proposals and going through our process. Having gone through it, I know it's a huge monumental task on a lot of these. Just appreciate their efforts and submitting good proposals. Thank you all. Mr. Chairman, the next item under tab B of the book, this is a contract amendment 1 for the Lander Test Well Level 2 project. This is a time extension only amendment for an additional 12 months to the project. The original project was to drill a 3,000 foot deep well in the Flathead Formation. The consultant, Wyoming Groundwater LLC, developed a plan. There was some concern about being able to get a good well out of the formation, and with a lot of costs, they came up with a different plan to provide the water from a series of alluvial wells, and they've been going through that. They continue to go through that, but because of that change, which resulted in significant cost savings, it's taking more time. So that is the reason for the time extension request. And we would need if you agree, we need a motion to approve this amendment.
We'll move that we extend this by the recommendation.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion to extend this contract by Senator or Governor Commissioner Suker, and seconded by Governor
Yes.
Wagner. Seconded by Commissioner Wagner. Any more comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next item under tab C is a closeout memo. This closeout memo is for the Platte Alliance Water Supply, or PAWS project. It was a level 2 project, and the sponsor was the Goshen County Board of Commissioners. This was a cooperative project between Wyoming entities and also Nebraska entities. The final report has been received. The work, at least under this contract, is complete. The recommendations, and I apologize, I'm not overly familiar with this project, but as I understand it, the recommendations are to really continue the project, although we are not participating as a funding partner at this point. We do not anticipate that, at least in the near future, that we will be, but there still is work going on by the other entities, mainly trying to solidify some of the governance committee organization, as well as trying to get stakeholder engagement and involvement, and to look for potential fundings for the project. The proposed motion for this, I believe, was statutorily required, or not required, but statutorily 3 options to finalize this project and to end it. And so the option that we're recommending the commission approve to finalize the project would be to allow the study to continue at the presently authorized level of activity. That is because of the legislation worded it that way. We give them 3 options, either quit the project, continue with the level of activity, and I forget what the third one, or to advance it. So because we're not funding it, our recommendation is to allow it to continue, not to die, but our funding is complete. So we do have a motion in the back of it if anybody would choose to use that as a motion for the project.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Moved by Commissioner Wagner. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Little. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Discussion on it.
Any discussion on it? Sorry.
I was involved in this project with Nebraska, bringing water down through state right-of-ways along the highway all the way down into Nebraska. And Nebraska needs this worse than we do at this point. They have a lot of arsenic and uranium and you name it in their water down there. And at first we were trying to mingle our funds to do this, and we finally decided that wasn't going to work. And Nebraska finally had to kneel down and do some of the things Wyoming's way to get this project finished, this study. And I think it's a good study, and I think it's something that might be really important in the future. So I hope that we won't just sever relations with Nebraska on this. I hope we'll stay in contact and stay involved in the process, because I think Torrington and some of the other small towns along there, Guernsey and them, might someday need this water supply for their cities. So that's my.
Mr. Chair,
Other comments?
could we have the proposed motion read into the record?
That would be fine. If Rod, would you be willing to do that?
I'll try. I move to accept the Platte Alliance Water Supply Level 2 project reported as being complete, and further the WWDC makes the following findings relative to this project: that the commission recommend continued study at the present authorized level of activity. Number 2, based on the findings in the final report, the project is determined to be in the public interest. And number 3, the project's functions and services cannot be realistically be provided by any person, association, or corporation engaged in private enterprise.
Thank you. Any more discussion on that?
Mr. Chairman, in an ideal world, this is a project that would be wonderful to build. I've always kind of supported it. The idea was that you know, our North Platte communities, while their water quality might not be as bad as Nebraska's, it still needs a lot of work. We have towns on RO units. Torrington comes to mind, Yoder, but you know, it's going to be a long road to hoe given the interstate politics and how do we work out the partnership between two states. And but I do appreciate this motion that allows us to continue to monitor and participate in meetings and again, hopefully in an ideal situation, this would be a wonderful project to complete.
Thank you, Commissioner Purcell. Thank you, Commissioner Wagner. And you may need to bring this to our attention because you're going to leave the commission and we need you to bop back in here and help us out sometimes. So we have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Wagner to accept this, and it was seconded by Commissioner Little. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Back to you, Brandon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next item under D is a groundwater grant recommendation for the town of Cokeville to develop Cokeville well number 4. And I know Ben Jordan is here. If he would like to come up, he's more than welcome to. The recommendation for this is a 75% grant in the amount of $209,000. The reason for this request is the Cokeville well number 2 was determined by the EPA to be under the influence of surface water. So for them to continue using this well, it would require pretty extensive water treatment. So their intended solution is to drill a new well and replace the existing well 4. That kind of sets it up. I don't know if you have anything to add, Ben?
I don't have anything further to add unless there are any questions.
Excuse me. Demont, if you are on the line, would you please unmute yourself so you can participate in this discussion?
Not Grandy, I'll bet.
I believe you can hit *6 to unmute yourself if you're on a phone.
Yes, you can hit *6 to unmute yourself. He doesn't appear to be on the line.
And we'll talk about this for a minute and see if Demont comes on. How come I want to call you Ben?
That's correct, sir.
That's
It'd be appropriate.
That's a good looking color of shirt because I have BYU kids. Okay. Oh man, that one got some controversy going.
You're welcome.
And they make good money and good jobs. I am so interested in your knowledge of groundwater. And tell us what contaminated this well. What are we going to do in the future? We know what we're going to do in the future, but what should we have done in the past?
What I believe should have been done in the past is ensure that there's an adequate surface seal with this particular well. The well was constructed with steel casing and a surface casing, and when the annular space was filled in construction, it was filled with graded filter pack, so Colorado silica sand, and that was brought up closer to the ground surface than I think it should have been. And through an unfortunate set of circumstances, about 3 or 4 years ago, a knockout plug in a check valve was left out. And so when you pull a pump out, in order to lighten the lift, you have a plug that has a little hole in it, and you smack that thing with a bar, it breaks off, and then the pump column pipe can drain. And apparently when the pump was replaced after it had failed, they left that plug out and water jetted through the screen and actually blew holes at 2 different intervals, and subsequently went in and cleaned that out in order to keep from pumping sand. And then shortly thereafter, we started seeing these bacterial contamination events. and a subsequent MPA, microscopic particulate analysis performed by the EPA, found that there was surface water influence. And these wells are located adjacent to historic springs that the town had used. Those springs were abandoned to get away from surface water influence some time ago. I did go out to the site a couple of different times now on my way up to Star Valley and looked at the geology, and I'm going to recommend that we step off to the west. And this well that has problems actually sits between a test well drilled by the Water Development Commission that was not completed as a production well and a second production well. Both of those were tested negative for surface water influence through MPAs. So we're going to step over closer to well number 1. That offers 2 advantages. Number 1, it's closer to a well that was not positive for surface water influence. And number 2, it's not terribly far for connecting the new well to the existing infrastructure. So there'll be cost savings all the way around for the town.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Chairman?
Pardon me. Demont, I see you're on the line now. If you could go ahead and unmute yourself by hitting *6, you will be able to participate in this discussion.
Commissioner Wagner, do you want to hold? And let's see if we can get
There you
DeMont.
are.
Go ahead, DeMont.
Well, I appreciate Chairman letting me speak. I know a lot of you people with my work in agriculture over the years, and I congratulate Jody on that prestigious award from Ezra. I know that they're very capable people. I appreciate your consideration of this project. I'm on the city council, have been for 6 years, and have been over sewer and water for the last 4 years, and we definitely need some help. Ben's pointed out that the real articulately the problems we got up there at the well. I was surprised that we was picking up bacteria in our well, because that isn't in an area that's really a good underground water source. It actually comes out of the Pine Creek area, and Pine Creek's well known for its clean water, and so it was surprising that we had this problem occur. And it's really difficult to understand what happened in the past in the development of that well. And it's hard to find good well drillers and operators in this part of the world. And so as a town, we would greatly appreciate your consideration of this grant to us. We do not have a large budget to run on. Coatfield is very limited. And with the current crisis in our coal and energy over here, our tax monies are just going to be almost cut to 70% or less this first year. It might be getting worse. So anyway, I want you to know the town's behind it, and we'd appreciate your help.
Thanks, DeMont. Does anybody have questions for DeMont? Okay, don't go too far, DeMont. Commissioner Wagner.
Mr. Jordan, can you tell me why the one well was not completed, the test well?
I don't have a clear answer to that. There were actually 3 test wells drilled at various locations as part of a level 2 study, phase 2. So they looked at the geology with a investigation of the area to the west or east and north of the town of Cokeville, where the historic springs were, and identified at least 3 different locations. They drilled test wells just to see what they had for quality and quantity, and then stepped over to what appears to be a little more advantageous location based on being able to get up out of the creek bottom and minimizing excavation, because it's along a ranch road and there's a steep hill to the north. And so they actually had to kind of carve back into the hill to get these 2 well sites. And that's what it looks like to me, as they moved it just a little bit to the east to get a big enough pad to put on the 2 wells and a pump control house and disinfection facilities.
I just wondered if there was a particular reason why they didn't finish the test well, so that.
Right, then the test well was actually 6-inch PVC casing, and so it was sized to apparently to save on some cost and yet still get suitable hydrogeologic information to say, yeah, this is a good spot to go for our future supply.
I can add a little bit to that. Is it okay if I call you Ben, or should I call you Mr. Joyce? Anyway,
whatever you wish.
Not a BYU.
I understand the first well was drilled in the area where we were getting the water from the springs. And there was concern with that being in a wetland area close to where we were getting the water before. And we had to go to this well system so we didn't get Giardia and other things, not necessarily bacteria, and that's why these other two are picked. They're kind of up out of the wetland area for Spring Creek is what runs through there. And so the chances of getting surface contamination would be low. And how this other two well got surface contamination, he's explained it fair, basically how it did, but that's why we didn't use well number one.
Any more questions? Demont, I have one question. It just came to my mind. Are these wells on the Thornick property? Are they on state lands? Where are those wells?
They're on, Lynn Diamond's passed away. They're on Lynn Diamond property, but his daughter and two sons still own the ground in that area. And that's why Lynn let us drill the wells up in there. Well, that water up in there because he does get water off the water system from the wells. But Lynn's passed away, so.
Okay, thank you. And we have a lease there, obviously. You have a lease and everything's good survey-wise.
As far as I know, I haven't checked that, sir.
Okay. So.
And that's part of our scope of work that was included in the fee estimates for the project, is making sure we have adequate access.
I do know we do have easements up through there because we come all the way down through his fields to get to the town of Cokeville.
Thanks, Demont. It's good to hear from you. Anybody have any more comments, questions? Thanks for your input, everybody. Thanks for your input, Steve and Ben. Do we have a motion on the table with this?
Question. What about the state drilling permit for?
As far as the state engineer's office permit for this, the wells are adjudicated. So we will file temporary relocation request in order to be able to offset and drill within a quarter section with this new well. Once the well is proven to be successful, we'll file the petition to relocate the adjudicated water right to the new water source. And this is our typical approach. We've done it on multiple groundwater grant applications with water development. And I have not yet spoken with the superintendent of that area, but that's next once we do get available.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's highly likely it's going to be a successful well.
Right, indeed.
Ready for a motion?
Any other comments or questions? We're ready for a motion.
I move approval of the Lander test well level 2 amendment number 1.
How about Cokeville well?
Oh, Cokeville well. I move the groundwater exploration grant recommendation and contract for the town of Cokeville.
We have a motion by Commissioner Purcell. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Little. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Back to you, Brandon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next item on the agenda is the Green River Rock Springs Sweetwater County Joint Powers Board 10-mile water and sewer district transfer. And I believe Brian Seppi is planning on calling in. So Mr. Seppi, if you're on the phone, hit *6. Otherwise, unmute your computer and you can join.
Thank you, Mr. Gephardt.
Good morning, Mr. Seppi.
Good morning. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, this request is to transfer a portion of the Green River Rock Springs Sweetwater County Joint Powers Board water system that was constructed under water development funding in the early 90s. The this portion that we're talking about is a small portion of the overall project that Water Development funded. This is for a water and sewer district that is about, I believe, 4 miles north of the town of Rock Springs. The transfer would involve about 8,000 lineal foot of 8-inch pipe, transmission pipeline, and a tank that was constructed on the original appropriation. And as the area developed and grew, they kept tying on to the transmission as intended. And 10 Mile, it's my understanding that 10 Mile Water and Sewer District approached the Joint Powers Board about questioning who owns it, what can we do. So I think the agreement between the Joint Power Board and 10 Mile was to look at transferring the water. But because of the contract of our typical contracts, they have to get commission approval to transfer ownership of anything that we have funded. And so that is what's on the table today, is to get the commission approval. Under tab E in the notebook, I provided a memo explaining this project. And then I also have the director's recommendation. I will read that, but I'd give Brian the opportunity to chime in on anything I may have missed.
Thank you, Director Gephardt, and thank you, Mr. Chairman and commissioners, for your time this morning. The district is, as Mr. Gephardt said, north of Rock Springs, very rural district, and they have developed over the years, and the system that started out as just a pipeline and a tank at the end has now blossomed into a network. And now that the loan has been fulfilled and they are looking to continue and develop their district, this request came to the Joint Powers Board, and it would realign the district in the board's eyes to be more consistent with some of our other districts. After the meter and backflow preventer, the district is responsible for the water and the infrastructure, and this would align the 10 Mile district with the other districts that the board currently serves. And so with that, we wanted to follow the agreement and pursue this transfer, but first we wanted the commission's consent. So with that, I would answer any questions you might have.
Anyone have questions for Brian Seppi on this transfer?
Chairman, if I may, I would just add that, as Mr. Seppi indicated, the loan portion of the project has been paid. We released the mortgage. All of that is done. Darren Cook and Andrew are involved in reviewing the agreement between the Joint Powers Board and the district. We're in generally, I believe, okay with the agreement as it is. And when we get to my recommendation, the basis of my recommendation is to allow us to be fluid, and in case as they negotiate with the district and the Joint Powers Board, if anything changes in that agreement, it gives us the opportunity to make sure that we're still satisfied with it. So, and I can provide the recommendation whenever you're ready.
Any other comments? Commissioner Cott, this is in our neck of the woods. You okay with it?
Brian Seppi, the director of the Joint Powers Water Board, has spoken with me on this. It meets everyone's approval. It's a good project. I mean, the transfer is okay.
Thank you, Commissioner. Back to you, Brian or Brandon.
Mr. Chairman, the director's recommendation on page 2 of the memo, I'll just read it. The board has met the obligations of the project agreement. The board and the district amicably agree to the transfer described above. The district also agrees to assume ownership, contractual duties, and the operation and maintenance of the infrastructure. Following review of the proposed agreement for conveyance of real property and infrastructure by the Office of the Attorney General, the director's recommendation is to decline the state's option of first right of refusal and to grant the director the ability to provide the board with written approval to transfer the infrastructure to the district in accordance with Wyoming Statute 99-3-103A XII.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to accept what Brandon just read?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the director's recommendation on this issue.
Motion is made by Commissioner Cott. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Commissioner Purcell. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Director Gebhardt.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it.
Right back to Brandon. Brandon, Brian. Back to Brandon.
The note was placed in front of me. Mr. Geis, if you can unmute your phone by hitting *6. As he's doing that, Mr. Chairman, we'll carry on. The next item, number 10 on the agenda, is the emergency water projects rules. This is an action item. I did not provide anything in the notebook. What we're asking for on this is back in, I believe, July, we started the process of implementing rules for the emergency water project through legislature. And so where we are right now is we've gone through the comment period. The comment period is closed. We received no comments. So the next item, and Andrew thought he was going to get off the hook, so he may have to chime in to help me. But the next process, or in the process, the next step is for the commission to adopt the final rules as they were presented. And we're also asking for the commission to approve an extension of the emergency rules. If you remember, we had to develop emergency rules which were identical to the final rules. And it's going to be close in timing to formalize the final rules before the emergency rule time expires. It was given 120 days. So we're asking for an motion to adopt the final rules and also to approve an extension to allow us to file an extension for the emergency rules. Did I hit it all, Andrew?
Any comments or discussion on the emergency rules? If we need a motion to accept this.
I make a motion to accept final rules and emergency extension.
Second.
Been moved by Commissioner Glick to accept this and seconded by Commissioner Cott.
Yes.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Hearing none, motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a comment. I'm going to be interested in how this proceeds. We had the discussion about what truly constitutes an emergency last time when we were talking about the diversion structure for Wheatland. And I fear that we're going to have a debate over what does constitute that emergency. It sounded like there were legislatures that thought there had to be failure before we could act, rather than do the work before we had the problem. I think we need to follow this with interest, because I do think the purpose of the thing was not only to help people in the case of system failure, but also to do the improvements to ensure system failure doesn't occur. So anyway, stay tuned. It'll be interesting to see how we proceed.
I agree that we stay tuned and think about how we can bring to fruition the ideas of prevention in addition to collapse. Any other comments on that? Everybody okay with the motion?
Chairman, this segues nicely into the next agenda item.
We're not going to say the exact same thing.
Commissioner Purcell is excited to talk about number 11, which we will move to now. We'll start with Brandon, though.
Mr. Chairman, number 11 is aging infrastructure discussion. And under tab F in the notebook is a concept that the office has developed. As you know, the Joint Ag, State and Public Lands and Water Resources Committee has their number one priority interim topic is aging infrastructure. The WDO is involved in that topic. They've asked us to participate, and they really asked us how we can use our program to help with aging infrastructure, specifically aging irrigation infrastructure. So the memo that is in the notebook presents a conceptual idea that the office developed. And this concept is to develop a program within water development, either through creating its own program and account or to amend the emergency water program. I kind of like amending the emergency water program, but I don't know if that's the appropriate way to do it. But the intent of this is to really start addressing aging infrastructure before it fails. And so this concept that is in front of you, it's a little different than our traditional program where we are basically application based and we react to the applications as we receive them. This program is different in that the concept would be to go out to all of the irrigation districts, ask them what are their top 3, 4, or 5 critical infrastructure facilities, and start collecting that from around the state. And then the commission and the office would develop a prioritized list based on all of those. So the priorities would compare one facility in one part of the state to all of the other facilities in all the other part of the states in the database that we collect. And then once we develop that database, and then we start diving in a little deeper we would create criteria as to how do we view what is critical, what's the most critical, what's the most important to start looking at first, and develop a prioritized list. And then we kind of follow the traditional program of level 1 and level 2 studies. And I would envision that we would start off with 5, 6, 10 structures that are on the top of the priority, and start digging in a little deeper and doing some analysis and some field work and try to figure out what the conditions of these are and the ultimate goal of these studies is to figure out which one needs to be addressed first, what's the most important to spend state money on, and then start developing the rehab or the repair of that. The other concept that I'm thinking about in this is once we do this and we start defining the projects that we are going to go after, that we start leveraging state money to go out and create or to go out and leverage it against potential federal money or any other types of money. And then we can be kind of a pass through, or the sponsor could go out and apply for this additional money. I think in the state that the state is in right now, to go out and address all the aging infrastructure with state money, I think it's not going to happen. It's a bigger problem than that. So this kind of focuses our efforts onto addressing what we develop as a priority. So I just bring this up. I don't think it takes any action, but I would like some discussion, and what I would like to do is start making the rounds with Joint Ag and presenting this concept to a larger group. And I didn't want to get out ahead of the commission before I did that. So I would appreciate any discussion.
Any discussion, Commissioner Purcell?
No, I think it's a fine
Good.
start.
I think it is too. Any other?
Chairman, I do have I've got some comments and a couple of questions for Brandon. Number one, I really like the idea of shifting away from application only and becoming proactive. I think that's a really big step that is real important in this program and maybe in other areas too. But I have a couple of questions. When you mention going out to irrigation districts, by that we're meaning as well as watershed improvement districts and irrigation companies. Would we base that on the list that we have, the people that we send surveys out to, or how would we determine who we'd go out to and ask them about their infrastructure?
Mr. Chairman, Chairman Yankee, I think my intent would be, I might have said irrigation districts, but it would be to incorporate any eligible sponsor to our program to include on this effort. And then we would have to start with the survey list. That's the information we have available. I do think that this is a long-term program, and I think it evolves. It's not just we'll go fix one structure and then we're done with the program. I think this is a long-term program that will evolve, and it will new projects will come in, new priorities will be developed. I think it's going to be a very fluid process to go through this.
And I appreciate that. I think sometimes I'm concerned because a lot of times when we say irrigation districts, we're sort of using a broad term of all irrigation entities. And that might be a watershed improvement district, or it might be an irrigation company. I just think we need to include everyone in that, especially if there are people that we have a relationship with. We're sending out surveys to them. All these are people that might be applying for our programs. And my second question is I'm reading the sentence, the conceptual program would be specific to critical irrigation infrastructure 75 years old or older. I just wonder how that determination was made to have a specific age category in there.
Mr. Chairman, I put that in there. I don't know how general or how specific that 75 is, but I just wanted to put something in there to start us off with. It's up to the commission whether we keep an age in there or not. But if we're talking about aging infrastructure and that's specific, then we probably need to help define what is aging infrastructure. And so I just put it in as an effort to define aging infrastructure.
Thank you.
This doesn't preclude these sponsors from using our traditional program to help do their maintenance as we always have been. But this would be another avenue that we can use. Yes.
Say if there's a director of a irrigation district and he's fairly new and he doesn't really know all of the structures that are close to failing. And as he learns, is he able to come back and actually change his priority list so that ours could be updated?
Mr. Chairman, Chairman Glick, yeah, that's the way I see it. That, like I said, this would be, I envision a very fluid program, evolving all the time. So as priorities change, and I don't think the way I envision it is the districts may not prioritize as much as the office would. They would provide us information, and then we would develop criteria to determine the criticality and the importance of it. And so we would, in concert with probably the sponsor, develop a priority. And yes, I do see this as things evolve and things change in the field. So would our priority list.
Those are two great questions. Commissioner Cott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Gephardt, just a clarification here. Would this include cities and towns also?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Cott, right now we're talking about irrigation infrastructure.
Okay, just want to be
And-
clear on that.
And so my concept right now is specific to irrigation. If we get into municipalities, I think it's a much larger can of worms. I'm not saying that we won't go there, but right now we're focused on irrigation.
Thank you.
Good question. Any others? Any other discussion on this aging infrastructure? I appreciated Commissioner Cott. He sent me a list of who's in our districts, and he graciously took 50% of them and gave me the other 50% to contact. And that was a good proactive thing. That was a great proactive thing that Commissioner Yankee would like to see and others. So, and it's great that we're being proactive that way. Any other more comments? Back to you, Brandon.
Mr. Chairman, the next item on the agenda, if we're done with that, is water development program priorities under tab G of the notebook. This discussion is a result of one of Select Water Committee's interim topics. And at the last meeting, we presented kind of a readjustment of our program priorities that we've already developed. We were asked at that meeting by Select Water Committee to look at and include all of our other programs, including groundwater grant program, small water program, and any other program that we have. So what we have done with this is the last time we met, the program priorities that we presented just meshed account 1 and 2. And it did not alter the priority rankings from those lists. It just meshed the two together. The one we are presenting today, it does shuffle the program priorities. And it also inserts these other programs. Like I said, we're trying to be reactive to what Select Water Committee asked us to be. And I don't know how detailed you want to have this discussion right now. I did want to get it in front of you prior to, we will be talking about this in November with Select Water Committee. The list is there. We can run through it all together, or you can just look at it and ask questions, or take it, digest it, and then we can have discussion in November, however you would like.
Any comments about the priority list here?
I have a question.
Commissioner Glick.
Now, by putting all these together, Select Water's directive, I guess, is that their way of putting it all together, shorten their priority, and then make other funds available to be spent somewhere else?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Glick, I'm going to guess at what the intent was. I think the intent is concern that if funding is reduced, or if we get more applications than we have funding for, that we prioritize projects, not necessarily by account, but by doing the best projects that come in the door. And so with this method, then we're developing the priorities to do just that. In the past, I think we've been very fortunate to fund all of the eligible embedded programs that are projects that we have done, or large majority of them. I think the concern is that funding is getting tighter, and we may not have the funding for all the applications that we receive. So how do we compare them from one account to the other account to the other account to take a holistic look at all of the projects we receive and rank them against each other? So that's the intent of what we did with this priority list.
Any other comments? Appreciate the staff putting that together and others who were involved. more items there than I realized. But appreciate you doing that, and they look pretty good to me. Any other comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we need to spend some time with this. I see, a couple things I'd like to talk to Brandon about or with, before we get ready for the Select Water Committee presentation. But I suggest everybody do the same and communicate with Brandon on your thoughts in the interim before we get to the November meeting. And it is going to be at November meeting.
Yes, it will be, Mr. Chairman.
Definitely we could, there's a lot here. And I think we need to talk to Brandon independently about their any concerns they might have with the list before it would be nice if we were all singing out of the same songbook by the time we hit the November meeting, I guess is what I'm saying.
That's a great comment.
I would just add, I really appreciate the individual communication.
Anybody that has a concern, please send Brandon an email. And because we've had 3 big days, our minds are on other things. And now that the interviews are behind us, this can be something we can wrap our minds around. Any other thoughts? Back to Brandon.
Mr. Chairman, just an update on the operating criteria changes that we made at the last meeting. The public comment expires, I believe, tomorrow. To my knowledge, we have not received any comments. So just updating you that that'll probably be on the November agenda to approve the operating criteria changes that presented in the last meeting.
Thank you. Any comments about criteria? Moving on to number 14, small water.
Mr. Chairman, this topic under tab H is similar to what I was trying to do with the program priorities, which is to get it in front of you, give you time to digest it, and then we can have individual discussions on this. But again, this is another interim topic that came through Select Water. And we had some discussion on this at the last meeting about the small water program, specifically about how do we prioritize when we don't have funding for everything. If you'll remember, we talked about doing multiple alternatives on how we would look at that. And also we discussed that we would develop some sort of a guidance document that would kind of formalize how we evaluate the projects and what the program really does. That guidance document, I do have a draft in front of me. It is being developed. Jody Pavlik has done a great job on that. Not quite ready for prime time just because of the time that we've had to spend on it, but we will be presenting that in November, I believe. But we did have some, I guess, a request for the commission to do some homework again. And that is specific to how do we determine where we cut the projects off. If you'll remember correctly, I believe we have 8 priorities that we place each of these projects in. And so for example, we place all of the list of projects and they're all different priorities. And say we get down to a funding level that all of the projects in priority 4, for example, all the projects in priority 1 through 3, we have enough money to fund. So we would recommend funding those. You get to, say, as an example, you get to priority 4, or say you have 15 or 20 applications, but we only have enough money to fund 5, for example. How do we determine which of those we're going to fund? So Jody has developed kind of a menu of options that we could think about. The first option, and Jody, jump in if I'm missing anything or if you had anything to add, but the first option is an even priority cutoff. This one would be In the example I laid out, we can fund all priorities 1 through 3. We can only fund a portion of priorities 4. So this would just say, all right, we're just going to fund priorities 1 through 3. We'll save some money for next year and use that money in the next year's applications. So that's one concept. Another concept would be to require sponsors to only submit shovel-ready projects. That means they have to do all of the engineering and develop the plan before they even submit to us for money. And Jody, I'll run through this list and then let you add in any positives or negatives, pros or cons that you can think of. The next menu item is a geographic analysis by awarded projects since 2016. So we would take the entire database, divide the state up, and a logical division may be water districts. And so when we get to those priority 4s, we look at where they are located and how much work has been done in that part of the state over the history. The thought with this is to spread the projects around the state. The next concept is to prioritize applications by the number of open and incomplete projects. Again, in this example, if we have a sponsor come in with multiple projects and they end up in this priority 4 with some of their projects, we would look at how many projects are they sitting on right now that are not complete. And so the ones with the most inactive or incomplete projects would be the last ones to get funded. The next menu item is sponsors priority. This concept would be to take all the applications, we put them in the priority we believe they fit in, and if we run into the situation with priority number 4, we would send those back out to the sponsors and say, what are your priority of these projects? Tell us which ones you want to do and see if we can fund it that way. The next concept, I think this was discussed at least in concept at the last meeting, is looking at how these projects are leveraging other money. So for example, if we're giving $35,000 to a project, but they've gone out and got $400,000 for additional work around this project, to evaluate it that way. And I'll let Jody talk to pros and cons of that here in just a second. The next menu item would be current year small water program dollars analysis. This really looks at what are your priorities that we've already said we can fund, or not priorities, but how much are you getting funding in this year versus how much money do you have in this account for our priority 4 pool. And we're saying, well, we're giving you this much money. We're giving them this little money. So they take priority over somebody that's getting a lot more projects. And then the last item is asking you if you guys have any thoughts on this. But I do know that with Jody's thought that went into this, she had some kind of pros and cons that she went through this. And I think it would be helpful for you to understand what she thinks would be positives or negatives of some of these alternatives.
Thank you, Brandon, Mr. Chairman. I guess I'll just sort of start at the top, and I probably don't have comments on every single one, but if you would like to interrupt me and jump in, please feel free to do that. The thing I like about number 1, that even priority cutoff, is it's clean. There's not a lot of work that goes in on the back end on that. I mean, every year I get the applications, every year I analyze the applications and I put them into priority, and that necessitates a determination of what we can afford and what we can't afford. And so number 1 is very clean, and then that allows money to roll over to fund the next year. So there's nothing wrong with clean, and that does minimize the amount of work on the back end. Some problems I have with number 2, the shovel ready only, is I think that's sort of kicking the can down the road. I think that may buy us some time, but I think ultimately the sponsors will understand that if they want to get a project funded, they will just have to get it ready. And then eventually all of our applications will be shovel ready and we'll be right where we started. So that's my concern with number 2. The only other one that I really wanted to discuss was the item number 6. And I did take some notes on that so I don't lose track of my thoughts here. Many of the sponsors who prefer to use small water program funding use small water program funding as funds to leverage other dollars. So they will use small water funding, get our funding first, and then use that as sort of like cash that they can then use to leverage in-kind services. This is very common to happen with Ducks Unlimited and Trout Unlimited and some of the other funding programs. And so because our program is sort of like cash in a checking account that they can say, we have 50% up, up to 35,000, and we are going to use this if Trout Unlimited will use their engineers to provide a design and, or NRCS or whoever else the other partner is. My fear, if you use this sort of concept of leveraging those other dollars, you're unfairly penalizing people who are using our program fundings as a way to begin that process, because then they would not have the opportunity to get our funds first. I think there are many of the grant programs are these days, as we all know, are highly competitive and chronically underfunded. So when those dollars are hard to come by, many of the landowners across the state, we all know very well, and they work very hard, and they are very proactive in making sure that they are getting these projects accomplished, and they're putting their own money into it, and they're putting their own labor into it. And so if we have a landowner, and this is very common on our program, we have a landowner that's willing to put out the other 50% of the project money to make sure that he gets his project completed. My concern is that this is another scenario with that leveraging other dollars where we're penalizing the guy who's willing to just do the work and put the money up, and he just needs a little bit of help. And that just doesn't sit well with me. The other thing is sort of maybe a philosophical concept that anyone can feel free to argue with me about, but I think if we all sort of take a look back and we take a look at throughout our lives, those things that were gifted to us, whereas somebody paid for something and gave it to us, and then we took a look at something that we worked very hard for and we saved the money for, and we bought ourselves, there was a very different sort of ownership in the stuff that we've had to work for and put money into. And so in my mind, I think having the landowners have a certain amount of buy-in and being able to participate financially in labor and all that kind of stuff, I like the idea that we're not sort of rewarding people for getting a 100% grant on a project or something to that nature. And then I guess I'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody has on the remaining concepts, and with the idea that this is your program too. I manage the day-to-day stuff, but it is certainly not my checkbook. So if I have missed anything, somebody please feel free to let us know.
Thank you, Jody. That was our great comments. Any other comments from the commission?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Commissioner Purcell.
I'm having a little trouble with just the description, even priority cutoff. What you're saying is you get your applications, you prioritize them. And what you're trying to say that in the example of 1 through 3, then you go down that list and you spend the money available. And then anybody above that list is going to get funded. Is that what you're saying about even priority cutoff?
Give me 1 second. All this wildfire smoke is pretty hard on my allergies. Very close. So last year is the good example, because last year we could easily afford 1 through 3 in account 2. So the applications come in and I make a determination where those go, account 1, account 2, and what priority that project is. And then looking at that list, we could easily afford projects 1, 2, and 3, or priorities 1, 2, and 3 in account 2, but we could only pay for about 2/3 of the priority 4 projects. So the problem that we had last year was, what do? Do we cut it off at priority 3 because that's easy, or do we try to go in? And then priority 4 is irrigation priority. So that those typically have a lot of projects in them. So do we go in and then try to come up with an analysis to determine the most fair way to allocate the funds, or do we just cut it off at 3? This would say we would just stop at the last even priority, and if we can't fund all of the 4s, we don't try.
Mr. Chairman, follow up.
Go ahead.
When do we receive applications before the session?
Applications have historically been due January 1. They will be due January 1 this coming January for the last time. And then at the last commission meeting, you guys amended the criteria for the small water program so that applications will now in 2021 for the 2022 cycle be due in November 15th. And that is going to be a huge help for me to get all this stuff ready. And it will give us the opportunity to present this data to you prior to the legislative session.
Mr. Chairman. So we go through program priorities. And so to a certain extent, this criteria that we're looking at now, where it would really be used is establishing the appropriation you're going to request for the following year. Isn't that really what we're talking about here? This would be a tool that when Brandon and us are looking at new development, rehabilitation, level 1, level 2 studies, construction, that we're going to have to make a determination given how much money we have available to appropriate. And then you would use this criteria to decide how much money you have to spend and how far down the priority list you can go in making your request to the legislature. Is that the purpose of this?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Purcell, I would just elaborate a little bit. When the applications are delivered November 15th, that will give me enough time to say, okay, we received 120 applications, and those applications at face value alone, without any analysis on my part to their legitimacy or how much of those projects are eligible, will total this much money. And that would give us enough time to basically say, here's a spreadsheet of 120 applications, which roughly lands in this much for account 1 and this much for account 2. And then I'll be able to tell you if the checkbook balances based on our request or if it does not. It will not give me enough time between November 15th and the December commission meeting to go through every application, prioritize every application, and determine. Every year I get projects where somebody says, well, we're doing X, Y, and Z. And I have to call them and say, listen, we don't pay for Z. So we're gonna have to take that out of the cost estimate and then resubmit your application. And we'll take a look at that, as long as you understand we're not paying for that component. So it doesn't give time for that type of analysis of the individual application. So it gives us time to provide you with a first cut, if that makes sense.
Mr. Chairman, I'll add on to that. I should have mentioned this setting it up, but at the last meeting, we also discussed how would we cap the small water funding? And we presented some ideas on capping that. And so that's where this question came up, that if we do cap the funding to, say, for an example, $1 million in new development, small water, how do we prioritize the list of what gets funded and what doesn't? So that's the emphasis for this discussion.
Thank you. Rick, did you have anything?
I have a question for Jody. With the shovel ready, if somebody like maybe a municipal project, where they have a higher revenue base, if they consistently have shovel ready projects, I mean, will that always push them higher on the party list every time?
The way that the priorities are set up now. The language in the small water program criteria says that shovel-ready applications may be considered at the commission's discretion. So the way we distinguish those for the commission in our handouts in March is to put a little shovel icon next to the application, then to say, we'll put this as a number one priority. Next to that number one priority in the table is a number in parentheses, which is the priority it would have been if they had not received shovel-ready designation. But the language in the criteria allows that to be at the commission's discretion.
Like I keep wanting to look around. Classic thing.
Good questions and good comments and good research, both of you. Any other thoughts about small water?
Chairman, I would like to ask Jody, considering the importance of this, or how important priorities might become if we did go to an even priority cutoff, and probably in my case is re-explaining, I probably asked you this before, but how you determine the top three priorities. I think you mentioned irrigation was number 4. Can you explain a little bit more about what the top 3 are?
Absolutely. As luck would have it, I printed out a new copy of the criteria today so that I can make sure I'm not forgetting anything.
Check.
Yeah. So for those of you who are familiar with our small water program criteria, section C is largely a series of definitions which talks about which projects are eligible. And then if you turn to section D, and I think it's page 3, it has broken down to account 1 priorities and account 2 priorities. And those priorities are not identical to the project definitions, with the idea being that the priorities associated in that page 3 are as an agency, what have we historically prioritized and valued as far as our funding and what we're trying to do. So account 1 priority 1 is source water development. And this is all going to be spelled out in the guidance document too, that we're going to make publicly available to everyone. So source water development would be a new well or a new stock pond or something that is putting new water on the ground. Priority 2, see, and that's, pardon me, I'm getting my history messed up in my mind a little bit. Source water development being wells, priority 2 being storage for stock ponds or small reservoirs. Priority 3, a lot of these are sort of, well, let me just read it. Pipeline conveyance facilities, solar platforms, and windmills. So if you come in with a project that is, as an example, drilling a shallow well, but you're putting in, and we've had them this long, 20,000 feet of pipeline, I would take a look at the cost estimate for that project and figure out which component of the project had a higher expenditure. If the pipeline was the largest expense of the project, then it would probably be classified as a priority 3. So that's kind of how we have done that. Irrigation, as account 1, so we don't get a whole lot of irrigation projects under account 1 for new development. Priority 5 is the stream channel sedimentation erosion kind of category. And then priority 6 is a category we just don't have a lot of experience with. But that would be, as an example, if you came in for a fish ladder, we have one of those now, which it's associated with an irrigation diversion, but they're not changing the irrigation diversion with the exception of to make fish passage possible. So if it is strictly speaking a fish project, that would, in the way our criteria are set up now, probably make it a priority 6. And account 2 is very similar with the exception of number 1 priority under account 2 is diversion structures and rehabilitation of spring developments. But the rest of those are pretty similar. And then, of course, the shovel-ready description under that. Did that answer?
Yes, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for that information,
I have one quick, Chairman.
Commissioner Suker.
I guess, Jody, if it's for you, but do you consider replacement as a priority of an infrastructure due to potential failure? Does that jump on top on your priority list?
I can't say that it's ever come up. People will apply for rehab projects. And if let's say a stock pond has failed, we have had a few of those. We would classify that as a storage rehabilitation, or if a stock water pipeline has failed, that would probably be considered as a rehabilitation of a pipeline. So we have not historically made a designation as far as infrastructure failure being at a different level.
How about the potential of failure? It goes back to if we don't prioritize that particular project now, it may have a short life and create a bigger problem. I guess that's my question. And is that in any of your criteria as far as making a selection?
Not at this time.
Any other thoughts?
Thank you.
This is a good discussion, and we have to address it because of financial cuts that are headed our way. Any other thoughts? Back to you, Brandon.
Mr. Chairman, the next one is along the same lines as the last several items we've talked about. This is just putting it back out there based on our discussions at the last meeting. I think
Jody.
I think we discussed this, we kind of kicked it down the road, and this is the application fees for level 1 and 2 planning projects. If you remember, this topic came up in legislation. Potential changes were brought to the planning bill, and they did not make the final bill, but we were asked, and I did say that we would look at application fees and reevaluate application fees. In the project notebook is the same memo that we presented to you in August. And I don't know if I'm after or asking for anything other than to put this back on your radar, because this will be another discussion item in November. But this memo presents kind of an evaluation of 3 options. And then basically at the end, that not a strong recommendation, but it says based on assumed the original intent of the application fee and considering inflation, a revised application fee of $3,500 seems a reasonable consideration. I don't know what the commission feels about that, but evaluating a couple different ways, that's about where it ended up. So I do know that I anticipate Select Water Committee will want to have this discussion again in November.
Any comments or discussion on that? How hard would it be for a district to come up with $3,500 for an application fee? Is that where it kind of starts? Our district would have a tough time.
Mr. Chairman. I know this discussion is more for Select Water. It's not a big concern to us, I don't think, but my feelings on planning studies are, and I think it's the reason that we pay 100% for all of our planning studies, is that planning studies are done for us. They're not necessarily done for the sponsor, because I think a lot of times the sponsor comes in and they know what they want to do, and they would be glad to go right straight to a level 3. But we have to do our due diligence, and that's why we do planning studies. So making them pay, I'm fine moving it up to $3,500 or whatever, adjusting for inflation, whatever. It makes no difference to me. But making them pay 10% or something, that says here in Director Gebhardt's conclusion here that could pay well over $17,000 for a study and things, and that is just unreasonable, and it's just going to make it so that nobody can do this program, or at least the smaller entities. Big cities like Casper, Cheyenne, stuff, they can do that kind of stuff, but little tiny water districts and stuff are not going to be able to be eligible for this program is what's going to end up happening. So, I'm fine adjusting for some inflation, whatever. I don't really care, but my feelings on it is we do the planning studies for the state, and so that we are spending the best money we most efficiently can in level 3, which is where the majority of our money is spent. I know a lot of people think we spend a lot of money on these studies, but when you look at the total of what we spend in the omnibus bill every year, the very, very, very vast majority is in account 3, not in account 1 and 2, or I mean level 1 and 2, they're in level 3. So, I don't think it's near the big thing that many of the legislators seem to think it is. And I want to get my feelings out there before the November meeting and let you guys think about it. I'll probably have to say something again to Select Water about this, but that's my feeling anyway. So.
Good information.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Little has hit it right on the nail. We initiated the $1,000 because what we were having happen is consultant would come into a small community and say, we'll do the application for you. They basically had no skin in the game. I mean, they had somebody that says, here's a problem you have. We're going to submit an application for you. And if we get the money, we hope you'll select us. So the whole idea was to get some skin in the game by the sponsors, because we thought $1,000, if they were writing $1,000 check, they were going to pay a little attention to what the money was going for. And that was the sole purpose of this. This is not a revenue source. I think this memo presents that. And this percentage of the study cost, I think Commissioner Little had the right idea. If they pay a percentage of the cost, then perhaps they're going to want to have more input into the study than we really want or need. It's supposed to be unbiased, and I just don't like the whole idea. Now, I thought 3,500 was high. I'd double it if we have to compromise. But the reality of it is I'm happy with 1,000. And, but I'd listen to the rest of you and your thoughts for maybe a slight bump. But the percentage is, in my mind, off the table. Thank you.
Thank you. Good comments. Others? Does anybody need a break or you want to plow through? Okay, Riley, and I saw 3 hands go up, and let's take a 7-minute break. 7 minutes. We'll resume at 10:28. Yes.
Do we need to turn these into the director?
Replacement.
Director Gephardt, did you hear that question?
Do we need to turn these contracts back to you?
I
Okay,
believe
thank
we're
you.
fine.
Those are the things that you read, Rod.
Right,
We could leave them for Riley to shred or whatever.
okay.
Okay. Sorry, I was a little insensitive about the break. In my nervousness, I was just roaring on until I noticed some jittering by some of us. Okay. Now, item number 16, I believe. And then turn it to Brandon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm gonna let Brian, he promised me a very short, so we have a bet.
I like bets.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, under tab J, we have the construction progress reports, and we have 13 progress reports to present to you this morning. The first set of projects are account 1 construction phase. We have 3 projects to report on. The first project is the Aetna Storage Tank 2019. The sponsor is the Aetna Water and Sewer District. This is design and construction of a 500,000 gallon water storage tank. This project had a bid opening on July 2nd of this year. We had 5 bids. The range of bids were $867,000 to approximately $1.4 million. The low bidder was Knife River. They had a low bid of $866,856. Engineer's estimate was $1,096,190. The next project to report on is the Lower Norwood Rural Water Supply Project. The sponsor is the Lower Norwood Improvement and Service District. This is design and construction of transmission pipeline, a water well in a disinfection facility. Walter Cram is the project manager on that project. We had a bid opening on June 1st of this year. 4 bids were received. The range of bids were $980,000 to $1.8 million. The low bidder was Copper Creek Construction. The contract amount was for $980,532, and the engineer's estimate was $1,435,000. I'm sorry, $1,435,360. Last construction, or this is account 1, construction phase report, is the Sundance Tank 2018 project. The sponsor is the town of Sundance, and this is design and construction of a 100,000 gallon water tank to replace an existing tank. We had a bid opening on July 9th of this year. 5 bids were received. The range of bids was $593,000 to approximately $1.4 million. The contractor's amount was for $593,062. Engineer's estimate was for $822,947.
Yes.
Is this the ultimate replacement for the tank that was sliding down the hill and we had all the problems getting the money for as an emergency and all that?
Mr. Commissioner, Purcell, no, this project is a different project. That project was completed a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago.
Go ahead, Brian.
The next group of projects are, again, count 1. These are closeout projects that have been completed. I have 5 projects to report on. The first project is the Cambria Tank Project. The sponsor is the Cambria Improvement and Service District. This is design and construction transmission pipeline, pumping facilities, and a 200,000 gallon storage tank. The final project cost was $1,293,136.63. WWDC's funding share was $600,339.62. We reverted $26,110.38 back into account 1. The next project to report on.
Quick question. Is Newcastle participating?
Mr. Chairman, this particular project is supplied water from Newcastle, but it's not.
Thank you.
The next project is a Deaver transmission pipeline project. The sponsor is the town of Deaver. This was replace some asbestos, aging asbestos cement pipe. The project closed out. The final project cost was $1,550,331.85. WWDC share was $1,038,722.34. and we reverted $44,977.66 back into account one. I should note that reversion went back into the contingency account. We had a contingency account amendment on that particular project. The amendment was for $313,200, and we expended out of that emergency or the contingency account $268,222.34. So again, that $44,000 went back into account one contingency funds. The next project is the Lusk Water System Improvement 2018 project. The sponsor is the town of Lusk. This was to replace well number one for the town of Lusk. The project closeout summary, final project cost was $431,532. WWDC funding share was for $289,126.46. So we had a reversion of $256,923.54 back into account one. The next project to report on is the Pine Haven Well and Tank Project. The sponsor was the town of Pine Haven. This was to design and construct transmission pipeline, a new storage tank, disinfection improvements, and control systems. The project summaries on the back of that particular page, page 2. So under the project closeout, the final cost was $3,179,356.27. WWDC's funding share was $2,130,168.72. And we reverted back into account one, $338,831.28. That reversion was also a contingency account request. The original request for $392,000, we expended $53,168.72. So again, the $338,000 went back into account one of the contingency funds.
Mayor Suker, how's the tank working?
The well isn't great though, but it's coming on. Got some odor in the water. I think it's getting better. They're pumping it more, I think.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, the next project is a Sweetwater water supply, and the Sweetwater Improvement and Service District is the sponsor. This project is to construct transmission pipeline appurtenances. Again, the project closeout summary, the final project cost is $642,132.89. WWC's funding share was $430,229.06 and reverted $132,570.94 back into account one. The next group of projects are account two. We have 4 construction phase projects to report on. The first project is a Bighorn Canal Irrigation District Wasteway/Check Replacement 2020 project. The sponsor is the Bighorn Canal Irrigation District. This project had a bid opening on September 8th of this year. We received 5 bids. The range of bids were $981,000 to $1.6 million. Wilson Brothers was the low bidder. Their contract amount was $981,095. Engineer's estimate was $981,297. Next project to report on is the Cokeville Tri-Diversion Structure. The sponsor is the Cokeville Watershed Improvement District. This is to replace an existing diversion structure. This project, we had a bid opening on May 6th of this year. We had one bid, only received one bid on this particular project. The bid amount was for $487,211.25. Engineer's estimate was $377,430. Next project to report on is the Hanover Irrigation District Cottonwood Spill/Check Replacement 2018 project. The sponsor is the Hanover Irrigation District, and this is for the design and construction of a spill check structure. We had a bid opening of April 16th of this year. We had 4 bids we received. The range of bids was $543,000 to a little over $1 million. The contract amount was for $543,350, and the engineer's estimate was for $543,500. Last account 2 construction phase report is for the Midvale Irrigation District Rehab 2019 project. This is a materials only project. The sponsor is the Midvale Irrigation District. This is for the design and construction of 2 canals. This is putting existing canals into pipelines. We had 2 bid openings on this particular project. The first bid opening was August 13th. There was 2 bids received. The range of bids was $250,000 to $278,000. The low bidder was Waterworks Industries. And again, their contract amount was $250,058.80. Engineer's estimate was $233,378. That was primarily for the pipe materials. The second bid opening was the same day. We had one bidder. The range of bids actually was only one bid was for $4,037.80. And this was for incidental metals for the project. Copper Mountain Irrigation was the low bidder. Again, the contract amount was $4,037.80. Engineer's estimate was $3,527.90. The last project to report on is an account 2. It's a closeout phase. The project was a Dry Creek Irrigation District Rehabilitation 2019 project. The sponsor is the Dry Creek Irrigation District. This is to replace some steel irrigation lines that were deteriorating from corrosion issues. Project closeout, the final cost was $901,545.48. WWDC's funding share was $901,545.48. So we reverted back into account to $726,454.52. And that concludes the construction progress reports.
Did you win the bet?
Mr. Chairman, I would encourage another minute and 37 seconds of questions.
I have one, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I have a comment.
Okay.
I really like the format of your reports. They're easy to follow. I'd also make the comment, the reason I became involved in the Water Development Commission when I was an engineer, I was always low bidder. And it's interesting to see the estimates versus the bids. There were a couple engineering firms that were low bidders, but I was terrible at estimates.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Wagner?
In looking at these returned funds to the account, contingency fund account, we recently spent $500,000 for the tunnel dam contingency fund. It looked to me like we almost got healed up with the monies that came back in to the contingency fund. Is that true?
Mr. Chairman, majority of these reversions were back into account 1. The Wheatland Irrigation District, the contingency was account 2. So these are reverted back into a different account.
Good job. Good question.
I have one more comment. I think the results of those reversions, it just shows our system's working, I think. We get the appropriations. We have some flexibility under those. But at the same time, we are seeing that we're using the money diligently and that we are enjoying some reversions.
To that point, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to commend Brian and his group of people. They do a great job of making sure things stay on track. And I think what we're seeing is a result of some of that as well.
Brian?
Mr. Chairman, I guess to answer your particular question, reverting back into the contingency account, there was approximately just short of $400,000, just short. So $44,000 on the Deaver project, and then $338,000 reverted back in on the Pine Haven project. So again, just under, what's that? That's an account 1 contingency. Oh, yeah, you're right. That was account 2.
That's good. Appreciate that report. You get an attaboy. You don't get one of those glass rewards yet, but maybe she'll let you set it in your office. Just
looking forward to it.
all right. Thank you. That was a good report, and I'm glad that we're coming in under budget a little bit, or on those. The bids are better than we thought.
I won my bet.
And you won your bet? Okay. Get my glasses so I know where we're at. Brian, or Brandon, we're back to you on LaPrel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to give a quick update on LaPrel, and it's not on the agenda, but I'll give a quick update on Lake Hattie. So on LaPrel, we had a meeting in the middle of September with the project team. And I would say we were quite impressed by the progress they've made. It's obvious that they put a lot of thought and effort into it. At this meeting, they presented a list of alternatives. I think they are very close to a preferred alternative. It sounds like there's still some work on that to kind of vet this out and confirm. We've got a meeting set up, I believe, next week or the week after as a follow-up meeting to the first one. I think we'll get a lot more information on that. But I think we're at a point where this meeting, they're going to be asking us or helping us decide what are the next steps forward. I think we're at a point now where we're very close to saying this should be what we go on to look at. And then how we do that is what they're going to help us with. So I would maybe anticipate that in November, we'll have a pretty good idea of which direction we should be going with their assistance, and potentially looking at more money on which direction or request for more funding to take us further down the road, depending on what we hear. So in November, I think we'll have even a clearer vision for the direction and helping to resolve this problem at LaPrel. Chase. Yeah, if you have anything to add, please do. I don't really have anything to add other than we will be getting a tech memo based on our previous meeting where they think we are. Next week we'll discuss moving forward. So a lot of progress. It's pretty impressive, actually.
Commissioner Glick's comment was, do you think that the people on the phone heard that comment? And we're okay, right? If you want to repeat that, Brandon, or
I can try to just reiterate what Chase said.
Okay.
He mentioned that he's impressed by the progress and that we would be expecting a tech memo up to the current status of it, eventually.
Good comment. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to give a quick update on Lake Hattie. If you remember, Lake Hattie applied for a project in the normal process. At that time, we did not know what direction to go. And we were hoping that, I think at that time, we mentioned that we would entertain a project. We just don't know what it would be. So asked them to come back in November, and we would probably present a request for a project for them. They had gone through some mediation, and it's my understanding that right up until the end, they were about ready to go into the next meeting, which would have been probably the final meeting, and things fell apart. And so they're kind of right back to where they started. So with that, I think it's the staff's opinion, and what I've kind of asked them to do is try to develop a scope of a study that we can do for the district to look at options and alternatives on how they can move forward, and maybe we're part of the solution to come to an amicable agreement between the two parties and hopefully help resolve that issue over there. So we're starting to develop a scope. It's going to be tough to come up with something when we don't know what the solution is, but I think we can come up with something, and we'll probably present a project application to you in November.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, when you say two parties, who are the two parties? Is the federal agency at the table?
To my knowledge, Mr. Chairman, no, it would just be the district and then the group of landowners.
Yeah. The federal agency caused this?
My understanding, yes, and we can try to involve them.
Any other comments? Like Hattie? Harrell? Okay. Moving on to item 18.
Mr. Chairman, Brandon, you want to talk a little bit about Fontenelle and the standardized contract you're developing?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Purcell. We're going through some discussions right now with an entity that would like to maybe get a contract for an option to lease water out of Fontenelle. So we're meeting with them, I think, next week. But our intent is to develop a standard template for these types of agreements out of Fontenelle. We currently have 4 contracts. Each of them are a little bit different in one fashion or another. So I would like to develop a standard template agreement, and then depending on the discussions with this group, that will determine the timing, but we would like to present to the commission a template that we could use for all of these future contracts out of Fontenelle. And we'll be working on that and presenting that at a later date.
Good. Any more comment, discussion on that? Okay. Now, number 18.
Under tab K is the meeting schedule. The next meeting, November 4th through the 6th, that was originally slated to be in Casper. We had a room reserved at the Oil and Gas Commission. We were kicked out of that room. They, I believe, because of COVID, are asking nobody to use their rooms until January. So we've lost our room there, and I guess we've decided or would prefer to move that meeting here. One of the main reasons for that is Select Water will likely be a hybrid type of a meeting. And because of the technology involved, we know at least what we have here. We've used it before. It's been tested. If we were to go find a new room in Casper, we don't know what the technology would be available and what we would have to take. So we feel safer because of the circumstances right now to move it back here. If the commission's okay with that, and conduct the meeting here.
Any comments or further discussion on that? I think the technology is an important key there that we are able to involve everyone.
I would mention, Mr. Chairman, that in the future, we would like to be conducting these November meetings in Casper again, but as things get a little more defined, it'll be a future decision.
Comments?
Okay, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I missed the very important meeting you had last night at Little America. But I really think that it would be nice on the evening of November 4th, given some of the agenda items, it would be nice that the commission get together and talk about things like ranking and perhaps enjoy a meal together and maybe a beverage, and make sure we're all singing from the same songbook before we have to take on the Select Water Committee. Just a suggestion. Just a suggestion.
Yeah. We'll discuss that. Okay. We'll have to check with our attorneys, make sure we're not having meetings that are illegal.
Mr. Chairman, I can tell you that I have a little bit of a concern with that.
Yeah. I knew that Governor Meade said when there were more than 3 of us that we had to call a meeting. You remember that?
Yeah. Really?
Yeah.
If there's a quorum of the commissioners present, and particularly if you're discussing, commission business, I think the Public Meetings Act probably applies.
Sorry about that, Commissioner Purcell. How should we do that?
Sounds like we're not going to.
That came down from Governor Meade, and we were being sensitive to it last year before. Any other thoughts or concerns?
I think that's a statute too. You can't do it. Yep.
So the important meeting you missed last night was the state of the economy, the debate, and his 13 guitars. So Larry's going to bring his guitars since it's, close to Thanksgiving then and play for it.
Clear, cool water.
Cool water. Larry had this great
That
big.
time is gone. We missed
We
that
can't pass it.
Bridges.
Remember when we had dinner at Larry's house 2 summers ago and it was so awesome? And in his man cave, I went up in his man cave and there's some guitars. Anyway, he jams. Well, he had a jam ready for us. He had a costume. He had everything, but the buses left before he could do it. And so he's been kind of whining and wimping around.
No, time is over. It's
He
gone.
thinks that's opportunity's past, but I think we need to put him on the spot for that. That's the important meeting we had last night. Besides, we had ribeyes, and they were really good.
Well,
They must have been off of
Sorry
your
I missed
ranch, Rod. That was good. Have anything else? Vice Chair Click?
I think we should have a dinner together. Enjoy everybody's company and
You too.
talk about things that are maybe happening at home and across the state. Not necessarily geared towards anything that has to deal with select water or any items that may be on the agenda for November, but at least we can go out and enjoy each other's company.
That's a good comment. That's been a fun part of the commission for me. Get to know
Mr. Chair,
everybody.
we can do my man cave on that Wednesday.
We're gonna go to your man cave?
Yeah, we'll do that.
Hey,
What are you
bring the
gonna
guitar.
sing for us? No singing.
Okay, we look for a further report on that, and that's nice of you. Thank you. Any other comments or discussion?
Brandon's waving his hand.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, the last page of the notebook is the 2021 meeting schedule. And it is in draft form now. We put this together. This closely mimics the previous years with shift of date of the days, but they're roughly the same time frame. I think one exception was probably November. That was moved to a Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. We were shuffling between election day and holidays. And so we kind of looked at maybe having that meeting on a Monday through Wednesday rather than the typical Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Mr. Chairman? When do our terms expire?
March. And we have,
Which one?
I believe it is March 1. And 4 commissioners are terms end this year.
In 2021.
In 2021. Commissioner Wagner, Commissioner Lancaster, Commissioner Suker, and Commissioner Purcell.
Mr. Chairman, how many of those are eligible for a reappointment?
All but Mr. Wagner. Mr. Wagner's in his second term.
It's a solemn occasion.
Oh, yeah.
It's gonna be.
Get a November, December meeting.
Runaway party.
Anything else, Brian?
By God, we can't talk about anything about the commission. Well, that drives me crazy.
Yeah, and I think there's some good wisdom in it. And I just know there's some wisdom in it. I'll go that far.
All right.
Thanks to everybody who came, traveled, spent time, sat through meetings, even the river, the water flow. What do you call those meetings when you, Purcell, the boring ones where you talk about meters and river flow?
In-stream flow.
And stream flow, sorry, I couldn't come up with it.
Mr. Chairman, I'd have to say I did enjoy sitting through those interviews yesterday.
You were not looking forward to them, but
I
now it's
wasn't,
good.
but I might have learned 2 or 3 things. But the problem at my age, I forgot it already.
Oh. And I just wish the sponsors were still here to thank them for coming in and making their presentations. They were excellent. But things just play out the way they do, and not everybody wins. Thanks to everybody who takes the time to be a commissioner, and the staff for the extra things they do to make this happen. And Riley looks a little more comfortable this time, not quite drinking out of the fire hydrant like last time. Hope everybody's appreciative and has a good trip home. Can I get a motion to close the meeting?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Meeting moved by Commissioner Kaylee and seconded by Commissioner Little. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're done.
I'd like to have them send this out again.